Good morning, shining stars. Hello, hello, hello. Woo! Let's have some coffee together. If you're watching live in the morning. Oh, TA, and also drinking coffee. Even though I lectured to you more recently than usual, like we talked last Thursday, I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever. I was away this weekend. I just got back from the Bay Area last night because it was my partner's. Sorry, you're seeing Cat, but it was my partner's birthday on Sunday. Yes, he's a Pisces. Other exciting things in my life are that they just announced a new Pokemon game that'll come out next year that I'm really thrilled about. The disc golf season started, so I'll be watching a lot of disc golf while I grade all your work. And hi, good kitty. This one is Milo. If you want to say good morning to Milo, you can. Oh. And thank you again for bearing with me with that change of schedule last week. From here on out, we should be regular, normally scheduled programming. Yeah. So good morning. Welcome in, welcome in. Oh, are you gonna sit? Sorry, I'm making you don't have to look at his butt if you don't want. Okay, let's go lecture mode so that they don't have to see. Okay, so some course administrative announcements is that quiz 4 was just due. Again, I know this was a weekend quiz. I think that most people have done it, but you still have 48 hours to do it unpenalized if that hasn't crossed your path yet. And I took a look at the infectious diseases Jamboard that you were assigned for your remote activity this morning with the intention of archiving it so that you could use it for your exam down the road. And it's looking a little sparse. It's looking a little... Hi. It's looking a little bit bare. So please add more to the infectious diseases Jamboard. Also, thank you to those of you who've added it so far. The additions that are there look great. If everyone in the class, all 80 of you who definitely watch this, could please add one sticky to, like, especially the ones that have nothing on them. I would love to see at least a few stickies on each one, just covering the basics so that you're not totally surprised or don't have a resource should there be any questions about any of those diseases on the final. So please add more to the infectious diseases Jamboard. I'll give you like a fair amount of time to do that, but you know the course is moving forward pretty rapidly, so sooner rather than later. Moving on with that. Boop. I also wanted to go over, next time I'll go over 2 quizzes worth of frequently missed questions, but really on quiz 3, I could have gone over this last Thursday, but a couple people, now everyone's taken it, so it's okay. Quiz 3, this was the most missed question in the course so far. And if you watch the lecture, I did, while the slide was up, talk about it, and I talked about it later in the lecture, about how I feel about the word underprivileged. So the answer is false. When populations begin to experience poor health, it's because they are underprivileged. Most people pick true. Is it because they are poorly resourced or exploited? Yes. But thinking about, as a review, the definition of privilege, these are unearned advantages that privilege people over other groups, that reinforce unequal power dynamics, right? The goal is not to create more privilege for more people. It is to confer rights. It is to eliminate the existence of privilege altogether. It is to confer rights. When these benefits are universally conferred onto people, then it operates as a right. As it stands in the US, right? Healthcare is a privilege. It operates as a privilege. So does health. So does higher education, right? the elimination of disparities does not depend on the conference of more privilege, the creation of more privilege. So again, that's where that term is so important when we operationalize this definition. It is because they are exploited. It is because of lack of resources. It is because of socioeconomic position in many cases. But this is how privilege is. This is what privilege is. So that is false. And because that's a really important theme, I'm going to tell you this exact question will be on your final. You obviously will have, it'll be open note, so you can come back and reference this exact thing and see that this is wrong and this is right. But it's more important to me that you also understand why. So feel free to come with questions about that. Moving on to this week. Oh, are you going to jump down? No? Okay. Now we're moving on into behavioral epi. I am getting my PhD in health behavior, so this is much more up my alley than infectious disease epi, whereas I have a friend who's getting her PhD in zoonotic diseases and in infectious disease epi, and they like specialize in a specific disease and its manifestations in A, B, and C. I'm a behavioral epidemiologist. I'm a sociopolitical epidemiologist. I'm not an infectious disease epi. So now we're getting back into the Marina wheelhouse. So I hope that this week sparks curiosity for you, especially. Obviously, for kinesiology majors, physical activity is very important in health behavior. So this will be extra applicable to your lives, I feel. Something I want to talk about is obesity. People talk about obesity like it is a public health crisis, and I think the legacy of public health has been not to focus on the correlates of chronic disease, but instead focus on obesity as a chronic disease in itself. In 2013, it was like a very contentious hot button issue whether we should declare obesity to be its own chronic disease or not. Being candid, you can have your own values about it. I think that it should not be considered a chronic disease in and of itself, and I'll go into a little bit of why I feel that. But we can't get around talking about physical activity without addressing obesity, or at least mentioning obesity and sort of the legacy of public health. So, defining obesity, we'll get into BMI as well, but this is what it is. The WHO defines obesity based on BMI categories. The underweight is BMI less than 18.5. Normal weight is BMI 18.5 to 24.9. Overweight is BMI 25 to 29.9. Obesity class 1 is 30 to 34.9. And then they've had to make new classes, which really freaks people out, where they have class 2 and class 3. And this is the calculation for it. It's your weight in kilograms over your height in meters squared. Pretty simplistic formula, right? And you're saying this determines a lot of stuff about health, huh? I'm already suspect. So let's think like an epidemiologist. Would BMI consider different population groups equally? These are all like back to day one, thinking like an epidemiologist. What are some research questions we could think about? Does BMI consider muscle mass and fitness? Kines majors should probably know the answer to this or know about the evidence regarding this question. Are there better predictors of health risk? Insurance companies kind of throw up their hands and say no. Is obesity linked to cultural norms and behaviors? Is weight discrimination a contributing factor? And how do advertising and media subject verb agreement, influence perceptions of health? These are all epidemiological research questions that we could look at. Oh, your other TA's in the background. Looking so good. So, to the point of BMI considering muscle mass and fitness, let's go back. Remember, weight in kilograms. Pretty simplistic, don't you think? Especially considering the fact that BMI offers just a generalized guideline based on a person's height and weight. but comes with nuances, especially that it doesn't account for differences of muscle and fat. Muscle is much more dense than fat. So someone with considerable muscle mass, like a power lifter or strength-related athlete, could be labeled overweight or obese according to BMI, despite having low body fat percentage. So in this way, BMI oversimplifies health on the basis of race, sex. Also, men have less body fat implicitly. For females, body fat is more important. Age, you get a little fatter as you age, and that's all right. And fat distribution. So misinterpreting BMI can lead to incorrect health advice, and you could possibly just have higher BMI and be completely misclassified and have more risk, despite the fact that you are athletic and healthy, for muscle weight. So in this way, I think this is probably the best argument against it, and there's graphical learn. So, yeah, an athletic individual might be mistakenly counseled to reduce weight when they already have low fat percentage. I find that to be problematic. Or someone from a specific racial background might look or overlook potential health risks despite a healthy BMI. We see this among Asian women. So we like to integrate other measurements like metabolic health, and we'll talk about that shortly. If you're like, hey, BMI seems overly simplistic, why do we use it? Let's go over some more problems. It's also inherently racist and sexist. So BMI was developed as a statistical tool by a Belgian mathematician named Adolphe Quetelet in the 19th century. So this is in the 1800s. In the 1800s, this began. And he created the BMI formula as a means to analyze population level data. It was never intended to be a metric of individual risk, right? And study patterns of body size and weight across different populations. It was intended as a general indicator of weight status for populations, never as a health assessment tool for individuals. But how's it being used now, right? Quetelet, his index, he was many things. He was a mathematician. He was an astrologer. He was a statistician, but he was not a doctor or a health expert of any kind. So, when we look at BMI and we think about all the things that it's been found to be associated with, we get very little by using BMI to discover actual health consequences of weight. We get very little. And it's still a metric that is widely used because it's easy to calculate. I feel very sad. I have undergrads at UCSD, and they're doing a public health capstone where they get to answer their own little research questions, and they develop a survey, and they give it out, and then they do the statistics. And this is like their senior project, basically. And we have a group that's really interested in the social determinants of obesity, but really wanted to look at metabolic risk, but it's too complicated. There are too many moving pieces, and people have to have like their blood sugar and stuff. So I was like, we have to calculate BMI because it is easy. That's why it's calculated so often in so many studies. So there you go. And this formula and what is considered normal in terms of weight are derived solely from French and Scottish participants. Again, in the 1800s. BMI overestimates fatness and health risks for Black people, and BMI underestimates, that should be current, health risks for Asian communities, which may contribute to underdiagnosis of certain conditions. I will say about this as well, I just read a really compelling essay about how eating disorder treatment, hey, sorry, that's my cat, is more often denied of Black women and taken less seriously among Black women. So that is one serious consequence of this. And then significant sex-based differences in the relationship between body fat and BMI. If you are a female of reproductive age, your body wants to and should retain a level of fat that would make it possible for you to reproduce. And that will just be more than males your age. So it's reductive. It's reductive. It is ignorant of these sex-based differences. Yeah, I said this, but yeah, it was never intended as a measure of individual body fat, build, or health. Only was intended for use at the population level, and even then, it's problematic in its use. Right? What we can learn about it is very limited. And here we have childhood obesity measures. So adult obesity, we use BMI. Children obviously way less because they're growing still. These are CDC growth charts that you might have seen, and these are WHO growth standards. These were developed in the 80s among European kids only and are being generalized to all Americans now and today. And these CDC charts are based on way older data. I think these are from like the 1920s or 1940s, and might not reflect more recent trends in children's health and nutrition. We actually don't know how much this is predictive of. And still they're using it to calculate BMI just for age. So again, you'd use this chart for an individual. Was this ever intended for individual use? No. So that's my issues with BMI. So again, what we understand about obesity in terms of health is quite low. Hey, stop it. So here's obesity and physical activity. Here is, we even have older data, so that this might feasibly be predictive of this. Here is a 2021 map where the darker blue is more and like this lighter green is less. Percent of adults aged 18 years and older who have obesity. And over here on the right is percent of adults who engage in no leisure time physical activity. We do see that they're highly correlated. The states that are blue here are heavily the states that are blue here. The relationship between physical activity and obesity is plain, and you can see this on this map. There are a myriad of studies. This is perhaps one of the most well-researched public health questions of all time. But we can't just boil it down into behavior, right? Behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. Here's that same map, except this is inverse now, with parks. Same map as before, obesity darker being blue. But then here is the percent of the US population living within a half mile of a park, where blue is more people. And this lighter green is less people. So now that map is almost directly inverse. Parks obviously beget physical activity, right? Do you live within a half mile of a park? Yes, you do. Or you probably do because you live in California. I do. I'm thinking of my local park. So remember, when you're thinking about obesity as well, don't just reduce it down to behavior. Think about other environmental determinants. Think about other social determinants. And I'll pull up the ecological model from before. Yeah, just the reiteration that even when you're thinking about the importance of behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is not the only thing we can change to promote health, right? And with the associations that we do find with weight especially and poor mental health, you can't ask yourself, is it weight or weight stigma? Obviously, there is a direct line from obesity to patient outcomes. However, you can also look at forms of weight stigma, including provider stereotypes of patient. If I'm a doctor and I'm working on an insurance clock, and therefore I only have 15 minutes to treat this person, and they're young, and they present with no issues, I'm probably going to take a hot little stereotype, again, we learned about implicit biases, and say the best thing I could do for this person is counsel them about their weight. And if they start to make stereotypes about that person without asking them about their values of health and how they want them applied and what is most important for them in that visit, we can get biased decision making, which can lead to patient outcomes. It can be positive, but it can often also be negative, including here, where provider attitudes about weight and enacted stigma can lead to patient stress of like, oh, you're telling me about all my risks of like, if I don't lose weight, I'm gonna hurt my knees and have a heart attack in 10 years. That can create stress. And remember, if people don't have the means to change their behavior in their environment, that can lead to poor adherence to recommendations, mistrust of provider, avoidance of care, right? I don't want to go see this person again who freaks me out about needing to exercise when I work 4 jobs and can only eat fast food, and that's why I'm obese in the first place, right? So again, there are multiple pathways through which obesity produces outcomes. Provider enacted and other things in the environment do influence patient outcomes. Now, I'm going to flip it on its script a little bit. I really don't think that this line is as well established as we understand it to be because of metabolic health. Metabolic health is fundamental to our comprehensive well-being. It ensures that our body runs effectively and covers a wide range of processes, from the way we process our food into energy, balance hormones, regulate glucose in our bloodstream. And when we speak of someone who's metabolically healthy, we're referring to someone who has favorable measures across 5 pivotal metrics: blood sugar levels, triglycerides, high-density lipoprotein, or HDL, cholesterol, H for helpful, if that helps you, blood pressure, and waist circumference. Without the intervention of medications, we're looking at all those things, and all those things are what comprise metabolic health. It may surprise some of you, but normal weight as defined on the BMI index, doesn't guarantee metabolic health. In fact, weight is pretty much not correlated at all with metabolic health. And being underweight can carry its own set of concerns like malnutrition and a weakened immune system and hormonal imbalances due to poor metabolic health. Another concept I'd like to touch on briefly is yo-yo dieting or weight cycling. We know that diets often don't work. And the biggest predictor for children to get eating disorders is having a parent diet in the household. So yo-yo dieting or weight cycling is the repeated cycle of losing and then regaining weight. We see this in there's a hashtag that's like hashtag last night before or hashtag the night before. Please don't go look this up. Don't look this up. This is not what I'm trying to get at, is that you should look this up. That is people who binge eat a whole bunch the night before they start a diet, knowing that it is like a whole 30 or like a fasting 40, or they put you on a unsustainable, do it for a period of time type deal so that you can come back up. So that's what yo-yoing is. Repeated cycle of losing and then regaining weight because you know your diet isn't sustainable. And such patterns can jeopardize metabolic health, leading to changes in blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar. And then if you keep repeating these cycles, whole 30 and then going wild again, and instead of developing something that is sustainable for you and stepping away from fat phobia and developing intuitive eating and calling what happens into your body what happens, you increase your risk of losing muscle and gaining fat by yo-yo dieting. Even if you go on a diet more days than me this year, you're more at risk for losing muscle and gaining fat, which can heighten the risk of conditions like metabolic syndrome and heart disease. And for folks who start off obese or on that trajectory before they are intervened upon, and you put them on a diet, you're possibly putting them worse off for metabolic health rather than if you let them be obese and intuitive eat. So, metabolic health. Sorry, I scrolled instead of scrolling in my notes. And then stress, especially when chronic, is also a silent underminer of metabolic health. That long-standing stress can also upset your hormone balance, especially cortisol, and that can interfere with your insulin regulation, which causes type 2 diabetes. So, pretty much what I want you to take from this slide, especially this chart, is that weight is a crucial metric, but is not the only thing defining metabolic health. You could be normal weight and metabolically unhealthy. And for you, all as future health professionals, whatever that looks like for you, I want you to have this well-rounded perspective on health, that it is not just a means of managing weight. I'd rather you prioritize people managing their stress and cultivating a positive relationship with them rather than being the provider who stresses them out and throws them on a yo-yo diet. I understand that will, if someday you go on to work for insurance companies, that might be counterintuitive advice. You might not be able to do that, but I want you to remember these things when you have those conversations, okay? Yeah. And this is a behavioral epi lecture. Physical activity, we still love. Physical activity promotes long-term physical and mental health and prevents chronic disease, regardless of weight change or status. I tried to find the paper this morning, but I couldn't. I'll tell you which paper. I took my doctoral level research methods class with a physical activity researcher here at SDSU. And he ran an intervention that was like a physical activity intervention. So promote physical activity among, I'm pretty sure it was Latina women or Latina adolescents. And found it was like over the course of 8 months, no change in weight. But they got people to do physical activity, increase physical activity, and that was sustained. And they saw improved metabolic markers. The biomarkers were improved. Their chronic disease risk went down. Their physical activity went up. No change in weight. No change in weight. So physical activity promotes long-term physical and mental health and prevents chronic disease regardless of weight change or status. And this is the way that those of you who want to go into research, this is the way forward. This is the way that it's going. We need to better understand metabolic risk. We need to understand chronic disease risk and not just obesity as a metric of. So, promoting physical activity, you're learning about how to do it in all your other classes, kines majors. Still a valiant effort. We still love. And also, I'll tell you how to change behavior, but we're going to live today, the rest of the day, right here. Just with a cognitive theory, just in beliefs and motivation. And I'm bringing this up again. This is from literally the first lecture to let you not forget all this. So that's it. So the message for this portion of the lecture is that weight is not health and health is not morality, right? Whether you go into public health practice or work in the field of physical activity, please be reflexive. That means look inwards and keep questioning what you know about how you treat fatness and fat people. And when you can, pursue a more comprehensive and personalized approach to assessing health risks associated with weight. That's my little grandstand. Let's better get into behavior. Now that we know we love physical activity and not to force people into it, let's go back in. Also, I showed you that adapted physical model of physical activity, but here's our bestie again. The social ecological model. Yeah, I'm having coffee too. The social ecological model, like we've learned before, can help us understand the multifaceted and interactive effects of personal and environmental factors that determine behavior and contribute to health. But it emphasizes that multiple levels affect health. Really, behavior and is just on this individual level, right? Cognition, attitudes, beliefs, the things that determine behavior are here, but there could be barriers on every other level. So while behavior is important, the legacy of public health is that we focus too much on behavior, and especially in the realm of physical activity first, and I'd say substance use, like addiction second, have placed the blame on individuals for not changing their behavior while being ignorant of these things. So as you go forth, don't be part of that problem. Are you crunching on something? No, you're stretching. Sorry, that was my cat. Why do we care about behavior so much? This is going into the legacy, but hopefully not in a super problematic way, like I've said. The leading causes of death. The number one, this is 2019. So I will say, during 2020, COVID jumped to the number 3 cause of death in the United States. These are the 10 leading causes of death in the United States as of 2019. Excuse me. Number 1 is heart disease. Number 2 is cancer, but this is a combined all cancer. Now it starts getting different by sex. I will also say that it was already different by sex, but especially in terms of how this cancer breakdown looks, obviously very different by sex. Then for women it's stroke, for females it's stroke, and for males it's unintentional injuries. Big part of this is overdose. And what else do we have high up that I need to point out? Diabetes, stroke. Yeah, those are the high up ones. Diabetes, and there's stroke. Now, why do I bring this up? Now you see in the pie chart the magnitude of how important some of these are, and I'd like to introduce you to why behavior is important through the 3-4-50 framework. This is stuff you've probably known and been spoon-fed messages about all your life, but when you see it in this way, I think it helps you understand that importance. Is the 3 behaviors. Now, this isn't saying that half of all deaths are due to these 3 behaviors, but these are the important ones that contribute to these, okay? 3 behaviors: tobacco use, so that's smoking. Public health's greatest dub is curtailing smoking in America. So tobacco use, poor diet. I do wish that this would be more specific again, like I said. And sedentary lifestyle, so not meeting your physical activity guidelines for the week. These 3 things contribute to 4 conditions. Again, aren't the only thing causing them, but are contributors to cancer, lots of different sorts of cancers, cardiovascular disease, chronic lower respiratory disease, I spelled it wrong, and diabetes. This one, this one, this one, this one. This is chronic lower respiratory disease. That caused 50% of deaths. Your essay question on your quiz is to just narratively explain that. Is that there are 3 behaviors: tobacco use, poor diet, and sedentary lifestyle, that contribute to 4 conditions: cancer, CVD, CLRD, diabetes, that cause 50% of deaths in the US. So these are what we consider to be the big hitters. And that's why you all get to major in kinesiology. Well, half of you get to major in kinesiology and try and fix this. Why some of you are going into public health to try and address this. Why some of you are going to become dietitians to try and fix this. Why some of you will become policymakers to try and fix all of this, right? My cat might want to go out. I might have to get it in a second. And like I said, we love physical activity still. We love. Here's the global burden of disease from inactivity. If you ever need to advocate for why your job is so important, kinesiology majors. 6 to 10% of chronic diseases, which we know are the leading cause of death worldwide, are attributable to physical inactivity. This is attributable, right? Not just that contribute. are attributable. 6% of coronary heart disease, 7% of type 2 diabetes, 10% of breast cancer, 10% of colon cancer, and 9% of premature mortality. That's huge. And reports from the CDC estimates that 9 to 11% of U.S. healthcare expenditures are due to adults not meeting guidelines of the 150 minutes of physical activity per week. I'm sort of the mindset that health in itself is of value, but health economists like to see exactly where we're fumbling our money. So that's the metric for you to cite to those people. Okay. You might be asking yourself, what is a health behavior? I've told you I don't like the concept of poor diet as a health behavior. I like behaviors to be more measurable than that. The definition of a health behavior refers to actions taken by individuals, groups, or communities to influence their health. This can be a positive or a negative thing, even in framing. So remember, actions taken by individuals, groups, or communities to influence their health. It could be cigarette smoking. A health behavior could also be smoking cessation. If I'm taking action to not smoke cigarettes anymore, right? Health behavior can be sedentarism, so that I'm not moving, or it can be meeting my physical activity guidelines for the week. Engaging in 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity this week. Both those things are health behaviors. Screen time is a health behavior. I'm not gonna. Substance use. You should be more specific about what substance use, but that is a health behavior. Economy is a health behavior. Reckless driving, a health behavior. Driving under the influence, a health behavior. And I'm going to ask you there is a writing assignment that you could possibly do to know what a tactfully defined behavior is. And I have this up because I don't like just the concept of poor diet. And I tell my students who are designing their research studies for the first time to please define their behavior with tact. This can be difficult. You have to indicate your target and context, a situation in which a behavior is performed, where, using what, the action to be performed, and the time frame in which behavior should occur. Mental health is not a behavior. Mental health, first of all, is an outcome, but even like seeking care is kind of a vaguely defined behavior. Here's one that's defined with tact. Seeking treatment from a mental health professional in the next month. See how tactful that is? I could talk to you a month from now. I could set a timer and say March 27th. Hey, did you seek treatment from a mental health professional in the last month? And I could get a yes or no from every single one of you quite easily and measure that. If instead on March 27th or like at the end of the semester, I was like, hey, did you ever think about talking to a therapist? My best friend's a therapist. I talk to a therapist every day. I haven't been in a therapist's office receiving mental health treatment from a mental health professional in a while, right? So that's not a tactfully defined behavior. This is. So for diet, poor diet, not tactful. Eating 90 grams of protein daily for the next month. How many days this month did you eat 90 grams of protein? If I asked you to start measuring that, you could tell me. Right? That's much more measurable than just poor diet. Your salt intake, you could measure. Your fat intake, you could measure. Your carb intake, you could measure. Your caloric intake, though I don't love it, and no adult should be eating less than 2,000 calories without speaking to a dietitian, you could measure. So if you're going to talk about diet, you got to tell me exactly what component. Dietary variety, eating fruits and vegetables, fruit and vegetable intake, that's a better behavior than poor diet, right? Yes, specificity, but also mainly the key goal is measurability. Okay, so you're reading, I did fumble the bag, and I'm really sorry I did it again, where I published everything and then I didn't publish the module. So you haven't done your reading yet, but that's okay, because I'm going to tell you about it right now, and I'd like you to just use that reading as a resource on your quiz, for example. So we have a health behavior epidemiological framework. Health behavior and like health behavior is its own field separate from epi, but we have an epidemiological framework for health behavior to help us track, again, like the behavior as a determinant of disease on a population level. So why a framework? It's to specify a systematic sequence of studies on health-related behaviors leading to evidence-based interventions directed at populations. And in application, if you are thinking about changing people's behavior in research or in practice, look to the literature and see what is known about each phase. There's 4 phases. And we'll take, for example, mask wearing during the COVID-19 pandemic. Keep in mind, I've just talked to you about specificity and measurability of behaviors. Social distancing or stay at home is a different behavior than mask wearing. Vaccine uptake is a different behavior than mask wearing. So here we're just talking about mask wearing. Phase 1 is to establish the links between behaviors and health. If mask wearing wasn't helpful for the spread of COVID, like in reducing the spread of COVID, we wouldn't care. It's a waste of time and money and PR, seriously, and waste of our communications and getting people's limited attention in this oversaturated era to promote this behavior. So phase 1 is you got to tell me exactly what the link is between behavior and health. So here, basic epidemiological studies document associations between behaviors and health. This is a nice little visual abstract. I love a visual abstract. I'm trying to do these more. And here, down here, you haven't learned what a relative risk is yet, but basically, if one is included, there's no association. If it's lower than 1, the exposure is protective, and if it's higher than 1, the exposure is harmful. So in terms of COVID incidence, you can see that mask wearing is the most protective thing. It reduces your risk by half of getting COVID. By half. Physical distancing was also significant in being protective of COVID incidence, but mask wearing is the best thing. So that's the link between the behavior of mask wearing and health. Of mask wearing is effective in reducing incidence of COVID-19. And they got a systematic review. They got 8 studies, or no, they got 8 studies and calculated this. So that's phase 1, behavior and health. Step 2, which I don't want you to concern yourself with too much, is how to develop methods for measuring behavior. Now, it could start with something as raw as observation. I walk into Trader Joe's and I count how many people there are and how many are wearing a mask. Not all behaviors can be measured so like plainly by observation, but that is a way, right? You're really observing people in natural environment, whether they're doing that. Here is a metric of self-report. Participants reported in the past month how often they have worn a mask or face coverings when in stores, businesses, or other public indoor spaces like the office or gym, in and outdoor public spaces, and then they rate disagree or strongly disagree. So they ask these just 2 questions and can figure out people's mask wearing behavior. So developing methods for measuring. This is just another way to measure. You could go around and count people. You could ask people how much they did that and have them agree or disagree. And that's phase 2. Phase 3. Most of the things that you've probably thought about so far are in phase 3. And I think that is true. Probably for your Unit 1 homework, you have lived in phases 3 and also 4. Of identifying factors that influence behavior. So determining demographic correlates, influences, and determinants of behavior, basically to answer what psychological, social, and environmental factors influence the behavior. So here they're looking at correlations of demographic factors and hygiene factors, so multiple factors, with face mask wearing during the pandemic in adults in Malaysia And what did they find? The propensity of face mask wearing differs by gender. Being female, having personal protective equipment available, and frequently washing hands were positively correlated with the frequency of face mask wearing. So they found demographic factors, and they've also found hygiene factors. Now, they don't consider being female to be the exposure necessarily, because that's not what we're trying to change. But once we identify factors that influence behavior, we can say, oh, being female is protective or promoting of face mask wearing. We should go talk to the men. That's what we do with that information, right? Yeah. And they found all these multiple, having personal protective equipment available, right? That's an environmental factor that determines behavior. Again, so this isn't happening in a vacuum. So that is suggestive of an intervention. And let's get there. You would develop and evaluate interventions to change behavior. Perhaps people just need to have personal protective equipment available. Intervention could be to make it available. Now, policies can also be interventions. And quite often they are. For vaccines, they quite often are vaccine mandates. People get really hot about this stuff. But here is a mask mandate. And this was, I think this was 2020 through, no, this is it. June 1st to August 23rd, 2020. So no vax yet. They're looking at different counties. So on this side, no one is mandated, right? Yeah. On this side, no one is mandated. And on this side, this light line is people living in a mandated county. And this is people living in a not mandated county. So the cases went up and then started going down, whereas in the non-mandated counties, cases continued to go up. That's what's happening. You can see in this difference that they developed the intervention of a mask mandate, applied it to some counties sort of as a natural experiment. It wasn't just to experiment with it, it was to actually prevent the spread. And then they evaluated it, and they found that, yeah, the mandate did help the trend go down. Even though the raw data show, yes, there were more cases, ultimately the mandate was flattening that. Okay. Health behavior theory. We've talked a lot about different social theories and higher up theories. But health behavior theory is a little bit different. So within health behavior theory, a theory is a set of interrelated concepts, definitions, and propositions that present a systematic view of events or situations by specifying relations among variables in order to explain or predict the events or situations. Similar to before, but we'll get some flowcharts as well. And what makes up a theory, especially health behavior theories, are concepts. A concept is a theory's primary element or elements and can have meanings without the specific theory, like susceptibility. We'll talk about how this is operationalized as a construct in a theory, but even without that, you understand the concept of being susceptible to something. That's just a concept, like a word that you know the meaning of already. Constructs are concepts adopted for use in a particular theory. So within health belief model, which is the only health behavior theory we'll talk about today, there is the construct of perceived susceptibility. And in that way, because it's adopted for use in a theory, it's a construct. And then variables are operationalized constructs, and when I say empirical, that means how we measure them. So if I ask you how susceptible you feel, now I'm getting that construct of perceived susceptibility as a variable. Let's go over what a concept is. Now, a concept within health belief model is self-efficacy. The definition of that is an individual's belief in their capabilities to successfully execute a behavior, and even self-efficacy has its own sort of concepts within it. The first is performance accomplishments. In the case of exercise, for example, is you will feel more self-efficacious. You'll feel more capable or believe that you're capable of doing something if you've done it. So if I've ran a half marathon, I'm going to feel more self-efficacious that I could run one again. So that's what modeling is. And then vicarious experience. If you're similar to me, if you're like a 5'2" little person, and I see you run a half marathon, even if I've been on the sofa, if I feel that kind of physical kinship towards you, and I see you do it vicariously, that's going to increase my self-efficacy. Like, you did it, I'm similar to you, I could probably go do that. And my self-efficacy goes up. Verbal persuasion is exactly what it says. Maybe someone, it doesn't have to be someone like me, but it's like, hey, I believe that you could run a half marathon. Do you want to go running with me? That all will increase my self-efficacy. And then finally, emotional arousal. When I run, here's the trick. I do feel self-efficacious that I could run one. But the feeling of running can either elicit something positive for you, something relaxing, something soothing, something that regulates you. Or it could be an upsetting experience. And I think running is a good example of something that you can probably understand could be both for different people. So emotional arousal. How does doing that thing make you feel? If running makes me feel good, I'm going to feel more self-efficacious that I can run a half marathon. If running makes me feel bad, and 2 miles in, I'm like gasping, I'm just having a bad time, even if my body can do it, I'm going to feel self-efficaciously low that I can do it. I'm going to feel more like I can't do it, which is indicative of lower self-efficacy. Sorry, I had to talk through that one. So that is the concept of self-efficacy, which even has concepts within it. It is operationalized as a construct within health belief model, okay? And so let's get into the model in its entirety. Health belief model. Your extra credit assignment, people's ears perk up when they hear extra credit. So thank you for listening to the entire lecture so far. Just because we're an hour in, this is the content you need for your extra credit. If you want to get some extra credit, listen up. Health belief model was developed in the 1950s when the U.S. Public Health Service asked why people don't engage in preventive programs. Last week we learned about screening, right? So people were like, hey, we have awesome pap smears and colonoscopies and preventive care and like we'll take your blood pressure and all this cute stuff. We don't understand why people don't want to get screened. And so then they told the researchers to go ask and figure it out. And so that's important to consider, that this is a good theory to use for screenings or other one-time behaviors. We will talk about like using it for daily behaviors, but it was designed for or theorized for and has been proven for one-time behaviors more often. The other thing you need to know about this theory, and I think I've impressed this so far in the lecture, is that this is an intrapersonal level theory. We're just living in the land, the smallest little bubble in the onion of the social ecological model. On our adapted physical activity ecological model, I pointed to the little, we're only in the cognition area. This is an intrapersonal or individual level theory that is primarily cognitive in nature. So we are being willfully ignorant of all the environmental things around us. Here, we're just getting into people's brains and understanding why they feel some type of way about the behavior and what makes them more likely to or not do a behavior cognitively. So if you want to know how to motivate people, listen up. But remember that motivation isn't the only thing that can determine whether someone can do a behavior, but this is the motivation. The health belief model posits that two major factors influence the likelihood that a person will adopt a recommended preventive health action. That is value expectancy. So value being your desire to avoid illness or injury, and your expectancy being the belief that certain health behavior may prevent or mitigate illness or injury. My dad is, he's got part of his meniscus removed, and he thinks that he's starting to get arthritis in his knees. If you're a kines major, you might know that a great way to not get a knee replacement when you have a bad knee is to lose weight. So my dad doesn't want arthritis in his knees. And he believes that going out, and not with pain, but that going out and regularly moving, he plays pickleball every morning. My dad does. He believes that may prevent his need to get a knee replacement, that will prevent his arthritis in his knees from worsening. I told him not to play through pain, don't worry. But that's his value expectancy, right? And that's his preventive health action. He has a strong desire to avoid knee pain and also needing a knee replacement, so he plays pickleball every morning because he believes that is going to prevent that. Okay, here is the graphical depiction of the health belief model. It posits that modifying factors, this is kind of a big all dump all for everything else that matters about you as an individual, influence these 4 things. These 6 things are your constructs. I've laid it out for you plainly. But that the modifying factors about who you are will influence your perceived threat and your evaluation of the behavior to influence your likelihood of doing a health behavior. And that these things will also be impacted by your self-efficacy, which we've already discussed, and cues to action. Now, constructs are these little boxes. The 2 constructs that make up perceived threat are perceived severity and perceived susceptibility. That make up perceived threat. Perceived threat, not a construct. These 2 things, constructs. And that perceived benefits and perceived barriers as constructs make up one's evaluation of a behavior. I'd also like to say that over here, there's like an invisible behavior correlates with a health outcome. We'll get there. There's a slide about this. But that one's severity and susceptibility are more about an outcome than behavior. Remember, value expectancy. So these are your constructs. In your extra credit assignment, I think I task you with writing about 2 constructs. This is what you're picking from. And let's go over what these all are. Perceived threat is a combination of 2 constructs, like I said. Perceived susceptibility and perceived severity. Your perceived susceptibility is your belief about the chances of experiencing a risk or getting a condition or disease. And your perceived severity is your belief about how serious a condition and its sequelae are. Now, there are objective data about the threat. I guess I'll just combine about the threat of a lot of health conditions. People usually aren't, elbow deep in the scientific literature, really understanding that. So cognitively, they just have impressions of both these things for certain diseases. Let's talk about my perceived threat of different cancers. I'm pretty well informed. I wouldn't say I'm elbow deep in the cancer literature, but I'm like wrist deep in the cancer literature. My perceived susceptibility of testicular cancer is really low. You might be able to guess why. In fact, my perceived susceptibility of testicular cancer is 0. But my perceived susceptibility for cervical cancer is much higher. My perceived susceptibility for breast cancer, I've had folks in my family who have breast cancer, much higher. I believe I'm really at risk of getting those things. Cervical cancer just because I have a cervix. Breast cancer because I have that family history, right? So my perceived susceptibility is higher. So I'm more likely to get screened for breast cancer. I might start getting mammograms soon. Who knows? I'm more likely to go get my pap smear if I feel susceptible to those things. And at age 24. Oh, excuse me. If you're a female, you're going to have to start getting pap smears because you are susceptible to cervical cancer. And then severity. Pancreatic cancer, right? Alex Trebek, former host of Jeopardy. Some of you might be too young for this. I'm so sorry. He had pancreatic cancer and he outlived his prognosis. Pancreatic cancer is usually only captured very late and is extremely fatal. Because it's caught so late, most people only live 1 to 2 years with it. I believe that the severity of pancreatic cancer is very high. Whereas my perceived severity of skin cancer, especially when caught early, I know how to look at different moles, and I know my ABCD screening things, self-screening things, is much lower than that of pancreatic cancer because I know how fatal it is, right? So those are all my perceived threats of different cancers. If I feel susceptible and I understand different severities of different types. And remember, those are right there. Next, moving on to evaluation of behavior, which is comprised of the two constructs, perceived benefits and perceived barriers. Perceived benefits are belief and efficacy of the advised action to reduce risk of or seriousness of impact, or, I mean, this is in the framing of preventive action, is what you think you're getting out of that behavior. In my example, for your extra credit assignment, the behavior I'm thinking about is binge drinking, and perceived benefits are like social acceptability. But for getting the COVID booster vaccine, my perceived benefit is that I am less likely to get COVID. That's a benefit to me. Right? And I'll get to hang out with my friends more. Those are all benefits to me. So, you can also tell people like, hey, getting the COVID booster vaccine or being vaccinated decreases your risk by 90%. Oh, I've learned something. My cognitive understanding of perceived benefits goes way up, right? In contrast, there are perceived barriers. This is belief about the tangible and psychological costs of the advised action. Remember, I have this in bright red because students have a hard time with this. This is different than actual barriers. Going all the way back to that main slide, I told you that this is an intrapersonal and mainly cognitive theory, and that actual barriers occur on a different level, right? If there's no vaccine available to me, policies haven't designed a vaccine and made it available to me, like, that's a real barrier. If my insurance doesn't greenlight me getting this vaccine, that's a real barrier. A perceived barrier would be, if I tell my workplace, this isn't real, my workplace is awesome. If I tell my workplace that I need the day off to go get the COVID booster vaccine, my boss will judge me for it. Is that if I have my Vax card and I pull it out at the bar to get into the bar, my brother-in-law will judge me for it. Not true, my brother-in-law is very cool. But those are types of perceived barriers, right? Tangible and psychological costs of the advised action. Maybe even I'm just worried so badly, like when I first had the first vaccine, that it put me on my ass. It put me on my ass for 3 days. I felt so sick. Maybe it is a perceived barrier that I am worried that if I get boosted, it's going to put me on my ass again. That's a real barrier. Yes, I can plan around it, but people then instead go on Facebook and fearmonger about that shit. And I do think that like I said before, we've missed an avenue to create a better registry for vaccine side effects so that people know what to expect and what's normal, because if they don't think that their experience is normal, they will view it as a barrier and let it act as a barrier to performing a helpful behavior. So in someone's evaluation of behavior, you're balancing perceived benefits and barriers. Right? Do the benefits of something, do I think that the benefits of doing this outweigh the barriers of doing this? Or will I really let my worry about side effects outplay how much I think it's going to help me risk-wise and just take my chances? Get your booster vaccine. Again, I don't usually tell you how to feel, but get your booster vaccine. I also will say, I didn't say this before, and I think I should have been more explicit about this, is that when we're talking about perceived threat, susceptibility, and severity, the behavior is screenings. The threat is the health outcomes. Like I said here, there's this invisible behavior to outcome connection. And threat is your susceptibility, perceived susceptibility and severity of the outcomes associated with the behaviors. So if I feel that I'm not susceptible to motor vehicle accidents, I'm more likely to drive drunk, for example. You all know me and you know that I'm scared shitless of being in the car for too long. So that's in fact not going to happen, and don't drive drunk, please. But that is the cognitive understanding of what's going on internally. So remember, these are about the outcome, whereas these are about the behavior. behavior. Right? Okay. So all those things influence someone's likelihood of doing behavior, as does your self-efficacy to do it. Like I said, we went over that earlier. Finally, the last construct is cues to action. Little reminders. Basically, I feel like it was really aptly named. These are strategies to activate readiness or reminders. This is your doctor emailing you to get your pap smear. I turned 24 during the pandemic, so this cue to action went unheeded and they kept bothering me. And there's this new thing, iOS reminders to take your medication. If you are someone who has to take daily medication, it's like outside of the reminder function, there's a separate medication one that you can track and then go back and check your data. Aside from just reminders, cues to action can be other things. If you ever are driving down the highway and they've got the message that's like, drive sober, not wrong way, that's technically a cue to action. If you've been told to work out in the morning and the night before to jazz yourself up, you fold all your little clean workout clothes and put your shoes right by the door, like your running shoes right by the door. That's a strategy to activate readiness. That's a cue to action. If anyone's ever told you to do that, they might be a theorist. Who knows? So those are your cues to action. Now, that's the whole theory. Feel free to come with me with questions, to me with questions. Here's your extra credit opportunity. It's to apply health belief model to song lyrics. So you're going to tell me a song. You're going to tell me the lyrics. Linking to genius.com is okay. I will be gagged to bits if anyone's genius.com analysis already has the health belief model embedded into it. So you can absolutely use genius.com to interpret the meaning of the song. That's okay with me. Your task is to relate the lyrics to, I'd like this to be 2. So to one or more of the constructs of the health belief model. Let's talk to scoring. Relate to 2 constructs. You can get, if you really can only want to relate to 1, you can get 5 points for relating to 1. Okay? 10 points if you relate to 2 very well, and up to 15 if I want to show it to future semesters. Okay? So relate to the lyrics of 1 or 2, more points for 2, of the constructs of the health belief model. You're going to identify the behavior, try and be as explicit as possible about that. You're also going to identify a relevant health outcome. I want it to be about 1 page single spaced. And if you'd like to take this extra credit opportunity, it's no judgment if not. Like, this is something that you could put into your writing portfolio, right? And I think this is super fun. You don't have to go into the scientific literature. You just get to like think about music that you might already listen to. It's due next Thursday at 5 p.m. if you should like to do that now. Boop, boop, boop. Here is the assignment. Here is the prompt. Compose a written reflection about 500 words that applies to the health belief model to a selected song's lyrics. Start by mentioning the song title and its lyrics. Analyze how some lyrics relate to 2 or more. Okay, let's go 1. What I said, it bears true. 1 or 2. If you only do 1, you can only get 5 points extra credit. And if you do 2, you can get 10. And this is a varying quality. If you turn in some garbage, you get less points. You're not guaranteed 5 or you're not guaranteed 10, okay? Yeah, list them here. In your reflection, identify specific behavior that is either directly mentioned or implied in the song. Discuss this behavior in the context of a relevant health outcome. Make it good, basically. Here's the example. I cranked this out this morning, so I know that a week is a realistic time for you to do this. Oh, is it not going to load? Here, let me see if I can pull it up and pull it to the side for you. Sorry. This is the Kendrick Lamar song. I'm sure you might know it. Where I've got the song title. I've got the health behavior is binge drinking. I do define it in the paper. And I've got all the lyrics I talked to. I put the Spotify link. I have Spotify Premium if you want to do that too. I put the Genius link. And then I write for about a page. The bulk, this is 530 words. Again, roughly 500 words. I've got a paragraph for perceived benefits. And I've got a paragraph for perceived susceptibility. Okay. And here's where I define my behavior. And the outcome that I talk about is alcohol poisoning, which is down here. So use this example. Feel free to read this example. Here it is on Canvas. I also, for you, I might just have to open it. This morning made a list of possible songs. Like, please go to your own song library and think about like songs that interest you and that you like already. This is a non-exhaustive list that could be written about, but if you're really struggling, like, here are some songs that touch on different behaviors that I think you could write about, okay? So I hope that that is a fun extra credit assignment for you. Oh, I had this. I'll just explain this one. So here in Faded by Zoo, the lyrics are, baby, I'm wasted. All I want to do is drive home to you. In very few words, the perceived benefits are getting to his loved one. The behavior would be drunk driving, driving under the influence. The perceived benefit is getting to his friend, his partner more quickly. And his perceived susceptibility of a motor vehicle accident is very low, like I said. All that can be derived from these lyrics. So, yeah. If you want to do this, remote students, remote asynchronous, again, this is just due on March 7th. Students who want to come to activity on Thursday, think of just songs. Like, spend the next couple days putting the finishing touches on your Unit 1 homeworks, and just think of a song, because we'll write these together on Thursday. That's the plan for Thursday, is come with a song, and then I'll help you write it on Thursday. We'll have a little writing workshop, and hopefully by the end of that class period, you'll have it turned in. It's a short one, okay? Moving forward, Unit 1 homework is due on Thursday. Those of you who have sent me drafts, I'll review them right after lecture. I have a small handful to look at, so I'll be doing that over my little brunchy lunchy. Quiz 5 about this lecture is available. Because Unit 1 homework is due on Thursday, I've made Quiz 5 due on Tuesday, okay? So it'll be due the next lecture. So take your time on this. And then this was the last lecture of Unit 1. So next week begins Unit 2. And you have an important reading landmark. This doesn't mean much for you. The changing of the units doesn't mean much for you, except for the fact that you should be about halfway through wellness by next Thursday, and our activity will be to discuss it in class, okay? That's it for lecture. No one's chatted at all today, but I will hang around for questions while I do the Wordle and while I do the connections. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in. And someone last week said virus. It's super not relevant today, but we're going with that. Let's go. Smoke. That's relevant to us today. Please let me know if you have questions. Oh, my cats. Do you see them? They're licking each other. If you're lucky, they might start tussling. So cute. Okay, let's go stale. Let's go... What other vowels do I have? It might be... Let's try sense just in case. Okay, that was it. Lots of double letters, but we did it. We did it in 4. And then let's do the connections. Oops, sorry, you might be advertised too. Nope, you're all good. Ooh, lots of fish today. Like a goldfish, a pike, a salmon, but like a neon tetra is a fish. Oyster is obviously a fish. Oh, straddle, tuck, pike. These are cheer things. Cheer and gymnastics things. Those are like jumps. Cheer jumps. Let's get it. Those of you who are dancers, I hope you're really proud of me. Ritz cracker, goldfish cracker, oyster cracker, animal cracker. Those are types of crackers. Okay, spandex. These are going to be things that were popular in the 80s. And then who knows what this will be? Ladder, corporate ladder, salmon ladder, word ladder. No, I wouldn't have gotten that. All right, thanks for tuning in. Please reach out if you have questions about this, okay? Take care, students.